The imperial route to Yakutsk is not a road. It is a scar cut through the taiga, a frozen artery that bleeds men into the white void of Siberia. In the winter of 1892, I was a junior captain in the imperial gendarmerie, tasked with commanding a convoy of high-value transport. We were not moving prisoners this time. We were moving silver bullion from the mines of Nerchinsk back to the treasury in Irkutsk. The cargo was worth more than the lives of every man in the regiment, and the Governor-General had made that explicitly clear. We were 30 men strong, Cossack outriders on sturdy Yakut horses, and infantrymen on the sledges armed with burden-to-second rifles. We expected bandits. We expected escaped convicts. We expected the cold. But what found us in the Verkhoyansk range was none of those things. Before we continue, please make sure you leave a like and let us know where you are watching from. Thanks. The winter of '92 was cruel even by Russian standards. The temperature hovered at 50 degrees below zero. At that temperature, steel becomes brittle, and if you touch a bare trigger with a wet finger, you leave the skin behind. The air is so dry it crackles. The locals call it the whisper of the stars, the sound of your own breath freezing instantly into ice crystals as it leaves your mouth. We moved in a column of 6 heavy sledges. The horses were wrapped in felt and leather to keep their lungs from freezing. The silence of the taiga was absolute. There were no birds, no wind, just the endless crunch of runners on hard-packed snow and the snorting of the animals. The trouble began on the 5th day, near the Indijerka River crossing. We found the obstruction on the road. It was a trade caravan, or what was left of one, 3 sledges overturned and smashed. The wood was splintered not by impact, but by force, as if something had ripped the planks apart to get inside. There were no bodies. That was the first thing that made my sergeant, a battle-hardened man named Volkov, unholster his revolver. There was no blood on the snow, no sign of a struggle, just empty boots standing where men had been pulled out of them, and torn heavy coats lying in shreds and the tracks. They were everywhere. At first glance, they looked like wolf prints, but a wolf paw is the size of a man's palm. These prints were the size of a dinner plate. They were deep, sinking through the hard crust that held our horses up, and in the center of the chaos, the tracks changed. They went from 4-legged loping to 2-legged strides, a bipedal gait. The stride was massive, clearing 8 feet between steps. Volkov looked at me, his face pale under his fur hat. "A bear that walks like a man?" he asked. I shook my head. Bears waddle. This thing had run. We pushed the wreckage aside and continued. We had a schedule to keep, but the mood of the convoy had shifted. The horses felt it first. A Yakut horse is a fearless beast, bred to fight off timber wolves, but that evening they refused to settle. They stood in the picket line, heads lowered, eyes rolling white, trembling in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. The Cossacks tried to calm them, but the fear was contagious. That night, I took the first watch. The moon was full, casting a blue corpse, like light over the snow. The trees cast long black shadows that looked like prison bars. Around midnight, the forest went quiet. Not the usual silence, but a terrified suppression of life. Then a howl rose from the ridge to our north. It started deep, a guttural rumble that vibrated in the chest, and climbed into a shriek that sounded almost human. It wasn't a call to a pack. It was a challenge. It was singular. The horses screamed. One of the lead mares tore her tether and bolted into the dark. 2 Cossacks, brothers named Yuri and Ivan, mounted up immediately to chase her. I ordered them to stop, but they were already galloping into the tree line, shouting curses. "We cannot lose the mare!" Yuri yelled back. They vanished into the shadows. We heard them shouting for the horse, then we heard a gunshot, then a second. Then, a sound that I still hear in my nightmares, the wet, tearing sound of a horse being killed instantly, followed by a human scream that was cut short, not by silence, but by a gurgling choke. I ordered the men to form a perimeter around the sledges. We lit flares, bathing the clearing in harsh red light. We waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Ivan's horse came back. It trotted into the light, riderless, its flank flayed open in 3 parallel strips that exposed the ribs. The saddle was slick with blood. Of the brothers there was no sign. We did not sleep. We stood with rifles shouldered, staring into the black wall of the taiga. The cold began to seep through our furs. The fear made us colder. At dawn we found them, or parts of them. They were hung from the branches of a larch tree, 20 feet up. This was not the work of a feeding animal. Wolves eat where they kill. Bears drag prey to a den. This creature had lifted 2 full-grown men and displayed them. It was an act of mockery. It was telling us that we were not the hunters here. We were the livestock. I climbed the tree to cut them down. The bark of the trunk was gouged deep, ravaged by claws that were harder than iron. As I lowered Ivan's body, I saw the look on his face. It wasn't pain. It was disbelief. His Bairden rifle was bent. The barrel twisted like a piece of wire. The strength required to do that is biological nonsense. We left the bodies buried under heavy stones and moved on. Speed was our only defense now. We pushed the horses hard, whipping them into a frenzy. We needed to reach the way station at Tomtor, 40 versts away. But the creature did not let us run. It shadowed us. For 2 days we saw it in glimpses, a gray blur moving through the trees parallel to the road. It was massive, easily 7 feet tall at the shoulder when it dropped to all fours, and towering over 8 feet when it stood. It had the snout of a wolf, elongated and filled with jagged teeth, but the chest and shoulders were humanoid, thick with muscle that rippled under matted silver-gray fur. Its eyes were the worst part. They weren't the reflective yellow of an animal. They were intelligent. They were blue, pale, and icy, calculating our speed, counting our numbers. It picked us off. It didn't attack the main column. It waited for a mistake. A sledge runner hit a rock and cracked. The driver, a private named Sokolov, jumped down to inspect the damage. He was 3 feet from the sledge. The creature erupted from a snowbank on the opposite side of the road. It moved faster than thought. It was a blur of gray violence. It grabbed Sokolov by the waist. We heard his spine snap, a sound like a pistol shot. Before we could even raise our rifles, it leaped back into the tree line with him. We fired a volley into the woods, 50 rounds chewing up the bark and snow. But we hit nothing. Sokolov didn't even scream. By the 4th night, we were down to 20 men. We stopped in a narrow ravine because the horses were collapsing from exhaustion. We couldn't go further. We circled the sledges into a fortress, putting the horses in the middle. We built a bonfire that roared 10 feet high. Fire was the only thing that seemed to make it hesitate. But the creature was smart. It knew the fire would blind us to the dark beyond. It didn't attack. It circled. We could hear it pacing just beyond the light, crunching the snow. It started to speak. This is the part that I omitted from my official report to the Tsar's inspectors. The creature mimicked us. It didn't speak Russian, but it replayed the sounds it had heard. It replayed Sokolov's last gasp. It replayed the Cossack brothers calling for their horse. It replayed my own voice giving orders. "Hold the line. Steady," it whispered from the dark, the voice distorted, deep and gravelly, like rocks grinding together. It was trying to draw us out. It was laughing at us. Sergeant Volkov couldn't take it. He was a pious man, superstitious. He started shouting prayers, holding his icon of St. Nicholas. "It is a Volkolak," he screamed. "A devil sent for our sins." He grabbed a torch and threw it into the dark, illuminating a patch of trees. For a second, the light caught the creature standing fully upright. It was leaning against a tree, arms crossed over its chest, watching us. It looked almost bored. When the torch landed near it, it snarled, curling a lip to reveal fangs the length of daggers. It didn't run. It just stepped back into the shadow. Then the blizzard hit. The wind picked up, driving snow horizontally, extinguishing our fire in minutes. The world disappeared into a white, howling vortex. We were blind. That's when it came for the slaughter. It hit the picket line first. The horses panicked, breaking the circle of sledges. The formation collapsed. In the chaos of the storm, I saw shapes moving, men firing blindly, muzzle flashes lighting up the swirling snow for split seconds. I saw the creature tearing through the line. It wasn't biting. It was using its claws like scythes. It decapitated a horse with a single swipe. It threw a fully laden sledge over onto a group of soldiers, crushing them. I found myself back with Volkov. We were firing at shadows. Aim low, I yelled. Take out the legs. A shadow loomed over Volkov. He turned, firing his revolver point. Blank, the creature took 2 rounds to the chest. It didn't even stagger. It backhanded him. Volkov flew 20 feet, hitting a tree with a sickening crunch. He didn't get up. I was alone. The creature turned to me. I had my saber in one hand and my revolver in the other. I had 1 shot left. It stepped closer, ignoring the wind that was knocking men over. I could smell it, wet fur, stale blood, and something ancient like musk and rot. It towered over me. I looked into those blue, intelligent eyes. It wasn't hungry. It was hateful. It raised a claw to finish me. Then a miracle happened. Or perhaps it was luck. The storm had knocked over one of the lanterns onto a broken cask of kerosene we used for the lamps. The fuel caught. The wind fanned it instantly into a fireball. The flame erupted right next to the creature. Its fur caught fire. It shrieked. A sound so high and piercing my ears rang for days. For the first time it felt fear. It thrashed, rolling in the snow to put out the flames, howling in rage. The fire spread to the overturned sledge. The wall of heat drove the beast back. It looked at me one last time, its face scorched, its eyes filled with a promise of violence, and then it turned and ran. It vanished into the whiteout, a trailing comet of smoke and burning fur. I grabbed the surviving horses. Only 4 remained. I rallied the men who could stand. There were only 9 of us left. We left the silver. We left the dead. We didn't look back. We rode through the blizzard, half frozen, bleeding, until the gray light of dawn revealed the outpost at Tomter. The Yakut hunters at the outpost looked at our wounds. They looked at the claw marks on the horses. They didn't ask what happened, they knew. One old hunter simply spat on the ground and made a sign against evil. The master of the forest was hungry, he said. You are lucky he did not like the taste of fire. We were recalled to Irkutsk. I filed my report. I wrote about a pack of starving wolves, unprecedented in size and aggression. I wrote about the blizzard causing the disorientation and the loss of the silver. The governor general was furious about the lost bullion. He threatened to court-martial me. But when he saw the faces of my men, the hollow, haunted look of soldiers who have seen hell, he went quiet. They sent a recovery team for the silver a month later, armed with a company of soldiers and a light artillery piece. They found the sledges, they found the silver, the crates hadn't been touched. But they didn't find the bodies of my men. The snow around the site was churned up, but there were no graves. The bodies were just gone, taken. I retired from the service a year later. I moved to St. Petersburg, to the city of stone and gaslights, far from the trees. But I never sleep without a light on. And sometimes, when the wind howls down the Neva River in the dead of winter, I catch that scent again. Musk and rot, and I know it is still out there. In the vast white silence of Siberia, something is waiting. It remembers the fire. It remembers my face, and it has a long memory. The Trans-Siberian Railway cuts through those woods. People sit in warm carriages, drinking tea, watching the trees blur by. They think the forest is empty. They think technology has conquered the wild. They are wrong. If the train were to stop deep in the night between the stations, if the lights went out, they would learn what I learned in 1892. The taiga does not belong to the Tsar. It belongs to the wolf man. If you have ever heard the howl that sounds like a man screaming, do not look for the source. Run. Run until your lungs burn. Because by the time you see the eyes, it is already too late.